welcome back to my Live Below the Line challenge update. And I just want to let you all know that I did it. I ate below the line, $2 a day for 5 days, and you guys did it. We managed to raise $500. Yay! I'm really thankful for every single person who donated, even if it was just 50 cents. Thank you so much. It can go so far. You have no idea. So I'm making this video just to answer a few questions for people who want to know what it was like and what I learned this week and where I want to go from here. So, what was it like? Most of the time for breakfast, I was doing some sort of mix between oats, peanut butter, and a banana. I tried a few different things to sort of mix stuff up. I tried to make some cookies with it. I made some overnight oats with it. I made some pancakes with it, just with those 3 ingredients. And look, I was sort of tricking myself into thinking that I had something more interesting than I did. Most of my lunches were some sort of fried rice. The soup mix actually turned out to be incredibly tasteless. Living below the line for 5 days was no joke. It was incredibly difficult. My energy levels by the 5th day were completely shot. And when I counted up all the calories from what I was eating, I was definitely in a calorie deficit. This diet is not enough to sustain my body as it is. I was eating in a deficit this week because I literally could not afford enough food to not eat in a deficit. It's not a good thing. My energy levels and my focus started to slip around day 3. By the end of day 5, they were completely shot. I literally had a kid at work say to me, "Miss, you look really sick." Thanks, kid. And I felt really sick. I felt really awful by the 5th day. When I look at the quality of nutrition that I was getting, it's absolutely no surprise that I felt awful by the last day. I was not getting enough protein. I was not getting enough fat. The only vitamin that I was really getting too much of was vitamin A because of the amount of carrots I was eating from my trusty bag of carrots. But other than that, you can bet that just about every mineral and vitamin was deficient. It is a completely unsustainable diet. Sure, I was able to eat until I felt full, so I didn't feel like I was starving myself, but my body was not getting what it needed. And that is the case for every single person who genuinely lives below the line. And I would really like to point out as well that for someone who does live below the line, it affects their life in so many ways beyond just energy. So as I said, I was going to do a lot of self-education this week, because I wanted to learn more about the issue of poverty within Australia. I wanted to learn what myths needed to be dispelled. I wanted to learn what was actually going to make a difference in poverty. And I just wanted to learn about people's experiences and hear their stories. The first thing I'd like to share about what I learned is the myths versus the truths. There is a myth that if you're rich and financially successful, that it's just because you work hard. The problem with this myth is that it insinuates that if you're not rich, if you're not financially successful, it's because you don't work hard. That is just not the case. Not in anything I've read, not in any interviews I've watched, not in any TED Talks I've seen, not in any vlogs that I viewed, not in any reading I did. It is just not the case. This myth of laziness is an incredibly damaging one that impacts their dignity and self-esteem, one that makes it even harder for them to have the self-belief that they deserve more. Myth: poor people are poor because they spend their money on unnecessary items. Truth: when you live in an environment of scarce resources, it literally changes the wiring in your brain, and you develop something called a scarcity mindset. In this mindset, you're always thinking about the next paycheck, the next meal, and you're always just trying to make it through the end of the day. When in this situation, it makes it incredibly difficult to make long-term decisions. To be able to think in the long term is a privilege. I never knew that to be able to think long term was a privilege, but it is. To have a vision of 5 to 10 years down the track is a privilege because I don't have to worry about making it through the day tomorrow. Myth: you're rich and successful because you're intelligent. And again, similar to myth number 1, this sends the message that those who are not rich and financially successful are unintelligent, which again just couldn't be further from the truth. It doesn't come down to intelligence, it comes down to privilege and the way that being in financial disarray affects you, especially from childhood. Studies show that it is incredibly important for kids to have mastered reading by the end of the 3rd grade. This is an incredibly difficult feat for kids who live below the line. Failure to reach this milestone leads to lifelong consequences, and it is not because they're unintelligent. It is not because they have a lower IQ. It is because they don't have the access to resources. The second thing I want to talk about is the inadequate unemployment benefits within Australia. There are 800,000 people living on Newstart. That is 3% of the population. Approximately half of the people living on Newstart are over the age of 45, and a quarter of them have a disability. And so many are just trying to get a new start in life. The more I research this issue, the more that it is breaking the stereotype of the lazy person on the dole. It's just people who need a second chance. The problem comes, though, with the fact that Newstart is not a livable income. Newstart has not been raised in any real terms over the last 25 years. It has not kept up with the rate of inflation, and it is not an appropriate amount of money for anyone to live on in Australia. Out of the 36 other developed countries in the world, Australia has the lowest unemployment benefit as a percentage of the average wage. There is a lot of debate about raising Newstart, and there's a lot of talk about Centrelink not doing what it needs to do in helping people. And I think if you take a second and listen to these people's stories, you will understand that it's not just a cash grab. It's not just people being lazy. It is people who just need help. The third thing I wanted to talk about was my research into different solutions for ending poverty. No one knows the perfect answer right now, but let's just say that there are a lot of possible solutions to ending this issue that just aren't being taken advantage of. The most well-known solutions to end poverty include education and self-empowerment, but also the most interesting solution that I've heard of is something called the universal basic income. Stick with me for a sec. This is a theory that's been making quite a splash. I'd heard about this theory previous to this week, but this is the first time that I've actually in-depth how to look at it and how to look at the studies. And what I've been shown is amazing. It doesn't mean they stop working. It doesn't mean people lose their passion. It just means that we eradicate poverty and it gives people what they need. I strongly suggest you look into this and do some of your own research, because I remember when I first heard about this, it seemed like a pretty fishy thing to me, but I cannot tell you how amazing the research is behind this theory. Just as a little taster, I'm going to use some US statistics here for a second. The estimated cost of child poverty in the US is $500 billion a year. That's when you include law enforcement, food stamps, anything that is happening as a result of poverty costs an estimated $500 billion. The cost of giving everybody a universal basic guaranteed wage is $175 billion. It is literally cheaper just to eradicate poverty instead of punishing people for what they experience because of it. So there you go. That's a little bit of what I learned. It's been a really interesting week for me, and I'm really glad that I've gone on this self-education journey. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening. Sorry the lighting's sort of gone.